Light. Light is something that's fascinated physicists and mathematicians, especially in the last century. Einstein taught that energy is the measure of mass times the speed of light squared. We have learned that there are photons and now quanta, the building blocks of everything that is. Packets of light that have both particle and wave characteristics that don't follow ordinary Newtonian physics. It's safe to say that we're just barely beginning to understand light from a scientific point of view. But our faith has offered us an appreciation of light that's not inconsistent with science, but enriched by it. The Gospel of John opens with that beautiful statement about light as the very nature of God in Christ. And the early church celebrated this connection, especially at this date, Epiphany, the revelation of God. And after Holy Week, this is the oldest Christian Holy Day celebration that we know. It was very important in the early church. So listen as Isaiah and Matthew describe how Christ is the revelation of God to the world in terms of light.
Arise, shine, for your light is come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. For darkness shall cover the earth, and thick darkness the peoples. But the Lord will rise upon you, and his glory will appear over you. Nations shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawn. Lift up your eyes and look around. They gather together, they come to you. Your sons shall come from far away, and your daughters shall be carried on their nurses' arms. Then you shall see and be radiant. Your heart shall thrill and rejoice, because the abundance of the sea shall be brought to you. The wealth of the nations shall come to you. A multitude of camels shall cover you, the young camels from Midian and Ephraim. All of those from Sheba shall come. They shall bring gold and frankincense and shall proclaim the praise of the Lord. The next reading is the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 2, and verses 1 through 12. Thank you. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all of Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, as noted. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judea, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is shepherd to my people Israel." When Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared, then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And, having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. The word of the Lord.
How do you experience light? Without it, we see nothing. With light, we come to know our surroundings, our very selves. We come to consciousness as persons and societies through light's revelations to us. And even if we cannot use our eyes to see light, the light of our minds reveals the world to us. Without light, we have no plants or no water flowing in the rivers and seas, no animal life to inhabit it. Our existence is conditioned on light to provide that the water and dirt from which we are made comes into the form we call life. Well, we've developed a lot of complicated theologies. The fundamental nature of God and God's engagement with us is wrapped up in this mystery of light. Something that's available to all of us, and yet perhaps we don't completely ever understand it. And just as astronomers have found connections with the universe through light in the cosmos, we find meaning in our lives, connection to our world and societies, through the amazing blessing we call light. The early church saw the birth of Christ as the revelation of divine reality, light in the world that brought to apprehension truth and beauty and divinity in our lives. This light was also given as a sign through a star that the astronomers from Gentiles' lands saw and led them to Jesus. Something of the divine had become visible to us and to all people, not just the chosen people of Israel. This is a huge assertion. That the God of the Jews had chosen to reveal God's self to the whole universe, including all people, not only with a vision, but with divine love. God is no longer a tribal God, a God that protects an insider group, but a God for all people. Now, we humans have a strong tribal habit, don't we? We tend to see the world through the lens of our little in-group, whether it's racial or cultural or linguistic or nationalistic. Sometimes our sports teams or our music style affiliation, but it's always safer and clearer, you see, for us to know ourselves by who we're not, we think. But this tribalism was not what God communicated to us in Christ Jesus, nor is it what those magi sought when they came to visit Herod. However, Herod was concerned about the tribe and his dynastic rule, right? So much so that he went out. He tried to trick the wise men to come back to him so he could find and kill Jesus. And when they didn't, we know that he arranged the slaughter of all the boys under 2 in that part of Judea. That's the tribalism that raised its ugly head to prevent the challenge by the Prince of Peace. So where do we see ourselves in this cosmic reality? Are we aligned with Herod, working to protect our in-group from outsiders, willing to kill to save our supposed superior position in the world? Christians have often taken this role, killing other Christians, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, peoples in Africa and the Americas, all in the name of some insider God, which they had reduced and distilled from the great light that the early church saw in Christ Jesus. But Jesus did not embrace this diminished notion of the divine or the clubbiness that seems to go with it. Oh, we're Methodist, they're Presbyterian or Congregational or Catholic or Greek Orthodox. Oh, we're all different. We have to be protected from one another. Jesus wasn't into that junk. He really wasn't. And we should not be either. Jesus lived into the prophecies of the great prophets who bid us arise and shine, for our light has come and the glory of the Lord has risen upon us, so that the nations shall come to our light and kings to the brightness of our dawn. Jesus embodied this light in ways that meant that people of all sorts could see more clearly the reality of the divine, a divinity that exceeds all our notions of the in-group and the club. In Christ, we're invited to take on this radiance of the divine. Our Orthodox brothers and sisters call this a process of deification. Doesn't mean that they become God. It means that the light of God fills people, and people take on that light and radiate the love and light of God. Are we such people? Have you seen this light in another person? Perhaps. Perhaps you've seen a face and you go, that person is radiating something. There's light. There is love. There is some power that's present in this person, and you go, wow. Often it's an older person, a person who's been through hell and back, who somehow just radiates this incredible light. I've seen it. I've seen it in people in this congregation. And we see it when we look. And you know, in the icons and old religious imagery, that people have halos, right? Now, aside from being, maybe a toilet seat or something, actually, there is a radiance around the head of some people. Not everybody can see this, but it's there. And if we have the spiritual gift of discernment, sometimes we can see this radiance. But even if you can't see the halo, you get a sense that something amazing is going on in this person. They may not be the smartest person. They're usually not the most powerful. They're usually overlooked. Men and women who share the radiance of God. A kind of love that just flows from them. A kind of inner peace that has wonderful energy. Friends, you don't have to be, special for this to happen. Every one of us can experience this presence. That's what Epiphany is about. That God is being revealed here in the world in the very people who love God. Now, you've seen it in the face of a little child, I'm sure. They haven't forgotten God yet, right? And they radiate this glow of light. And as they grow up, of course, they mature, and we recognize, they're more sober and or crazy or whatever, but they're no longer radiating this light. So our goal is to re-enter that space where we experience that light in ourselves. It's not just a metaphor. It's an experience we can have when the presence of God lives in us. And that's the promise of Epiphany. It is the start of our service to God. Now you can go and become a pastor and study and do all these things and have conferences or bishops sprinkle fairy dust on you and all that kind of stuff and not have this. Or you cannot do any of that stuff. But truly to experience this wonderful love and grace of God, let that light shine. Let that divinity come within you. Amen.